G'day ladies and gentlemen, how y'all doing? Scotty49 here with you once again for another installment in the Warhammer 40,000 for the New Guys series. Now in this series we're going to be looking at all the different factions in Warhammer 40,000, talking about their lore, their core rules, the pros and cons of playing and collecting them, as well as how to best start off an army for them. And in today's video we're going to keep on looking at the Tau Empire, looking at the pros and cons of playing and collecting them as an army. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if you have recently subscribed here over the channel, I want to thank you so much for choosing to support me by subscribing here as well. It does mean it's greatly appreciated by myself, and you're going to be notified as to when I release content, which is always awesome to see more content coming out on the channel. But ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let's jump into it. Alrighty everyone, so the pros and cons of the Tau Empire will give you a good perspective on how the army functions on the tabletop, as well as what they're like to collect as a faction. Now, each time I do a pros and cons video, I do look at 3 pros and 3 cons for each faction, just so it's a nice and balanced way of looking at things, so you can kind of go, okay, these are the great reasons why I should be collecting them, but also here might be some things that might turn me off the army if you're still thinking about various armies of collecting Warhammer 40k, if it's going to be your first army or if it's to add to your collection as well. So to start off with, we've got the pros, and the first pro nonetheless for the Tau is ranged firepower. If there is one thing that the Tau Empire are most notably known for, it is their ranged firepower potential. The Tau Empire are likely to have some of the best ranged weaponry in the game, from their pulse rifles on basic infantry to plasma rifles and cyclic ion blasters on crisis suits, right up to railguns on hammerhead gunships. The Tau are able to make use of a great variety of different types of firepower to face almost any foe set against them, whether that's anti-infantry firepower, decent anti-heavy infantry and light tank firepower, or good heavy anti-tank firepower. With particular units like the crisis suits, because they can take multiple weapons at the same time, magnetization of those options can be quite essential when you're wanting to tool up your crisis suits in different ways. So it's really important to consider potential magnetization if you are wanting to have all these different options and swapping in and out. Say you want to take flamers one week, burst cannons the next, with your plasma rifles and taking 2 plasma rifles, or you want to test out a plasma rifle with missile pod. There's a lot of units where magnetization is going to come in great use. So bear that in mind, particularly if you're wanting to get the benefit of some of the great firepower options that the Tau do have access to. Now, pro number 2 is they've got a great variety of units. Now, the Tau Empire, as I've said, have got a great variety of units that they can field at their disposal. They have a great assortment of foot infantry between their Pathfinders, Fire Warriors, and Kroot, as well as fast and durable battle suits and vehicles, strong characters, and great auxiliary units from the Kroot and Vespid to provide different tactical options and different types of firepower as well. You can bring in broadsides that have a smaller railgun, or you can have high-yield missile pods on them to deal a lot more shots with less damage. Things like that. There's a lot of variety in that regard for your different options within the Tau army. Across the entire army, you will be able to build the army that you both like the look of, as well as find multiple units that will fit into the same cohesive theme that you're going for. Say you're wanting to go more of a stealthy force, you can go down the route of taking stealth suits instead of crisis battle suits and taking ghost keels with Pathfinders and Fire Warriors. Or if you're wanting to go down the mechanized route, you could go with Devilfish and Hammerheads and Piranhas with troops in those Devilfish to really give that kind of mechanized, fast-paced, Fish of Fury as it's commonly called, style of list. And if you're wanting to go down the battle suit route, you've got a ton of different options. Outside of the stealthier ones that I've just mentioned, you've got the Crisis battle suits, as well as the Crisis Bodyguard battle suits with the Storm Surges and Riptides, and the Broadsides and Commanders in various different types of Commander Crisis suits as well, that will allow you to do just that. There's a lot of depth that you can go with from all these different areas, or combine them all to come up with something quite unique. It is completely up to you, the direction that you want to take your Tau army. Now, the third pro is that Tau in general have actually got really good mobility. And as I did just slightly touch on, they've got a good amount of mobility choices in terms of the vehicles, with the Devilfish, Piranhas. Some of their heavier vehicles might be a bit slower because of the weapons they carry, but also they're not necessarily the toughest, so they sacrifice some toughness for that speed to get some maneuverability advantages on your opponent. Now, most battle suits, commanders, vehicles, and auxiliary units will have a higher than average movement characteristic, allowing you to get them into position quicker where you need them to be a lot quicker. So it means you're able to get those angles on your opponent and put down that firepower, maybe turn 2 instead of turn 3. So it's really important to consider that when you're building your army as well. And also, there are units in the army that have access to all assault type weapons, which means that you can take advantage of using an advanced move and still be able to fire the maximum potential with the benefits of some of the Tau core rules that we're going to be getting into in the next video. So that will further add to this point, and overall this makes Tau able to get where they want to get and unleash some devastating firepower when they want to, really quickly and effectively. Alrighty, so that kind of wraps us up for the 3 different pros. Now we're going to look at the 3 cons of collecting and playing Tau Empire. Now the first one is they have limited close combat ability. Outside some of their Kroot units and weapon upgrades that can take on crisis suits or crisis commanders, the Tau Empire are significantly limited when it comes to close combat potential. This means that if your opponent's army is able to get through your firepower, able to get through any overwatch you decide to make as well, then they're able to actually potentially do a lot of significant damage to your units in close combat and potentially tie some of those units up whilst being able to do so. However, using the Tau mobility and positioning your units quite well, you can actually avoid this from occurring during your games, as you can manage threat ranges and make sure that you're at your furthest distance away whilst mitigating or making charges as hard as possible for your opponent. The second con for the Tau Empire is, unfortunately, they are high points costed, which means that due to their strength of the Tau Empire and their armies, as they are doing quite well in the game at the moment, with their mobility and firepower, it does mean that units in general and weapon upgrades are higher costed compared to other factions. This means that you're going to be able to field less units in general on the table because you're paying a higher points cost for it. It also means you're going to field less of a variety of units within your army because you'll be able to field those less units. So you might actually have less units on the battlefield compared to your opponent. That way you're having to place down some more key units rather than deployment baiting certain ones, which is a strategy that you can employ, or you're having to deal a lot of damage with a few units to get their points back, whilst your opponent might have to lose multiple units for you to do so. So you kind of have to deal a lot of damage quickly with multiple units so that you're able to mitigate those losses and be able to cause the same amount of losses to your opponent. It's just something to be aware of when you are building your Tau army lists. And now the third con for the Tau Empire is, unfortunately, they are a one-trick pony faction. Now what I mean by this is that outside of shooting, the faction actually does not really interact with your opponent's army unless they actually get into close combat with you, or you choose to engage in close combat yourself. I don't know why you would, but you might choose to do so. So outside of your invocations from your ethereals and all of your shooting, you don't have psychic powers and you don't have much in the way of close combat ability outside of some Kroot units. So really it means that the majority of interaction you're doing with your opponent is in your shooting phase. So it means that it's just going to be very much you move, you do some abilities, you shoot, pass the turn. And that's really what you're going to end up doing with your army. So maybe this might be a big deal breaker for you if you like to be able to field different styles of lists, different varieties of units in those styles. This might be a bit of a turn off for you in terms of playing the Tau Empire. But ladies and gentlemen, that is it for the 3 pros and the 3 cons of playing and collecting the Tau Empire. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, well, I hope that you have enjoyed this video where we have discussed the pros and cons of collecting and playing the Tau Empire, and I hope I've given you a great insight into why you might or might not want to collect them as a faction. Now, if you did enjoy this video, make sure to hit that like button. If you have any comments or anything you want to add or ask me, feel free to let me know down in the comment section below. And if you haven't already, feel free to hit that subscribe button. Make sure that notification bell is turned on so that you're going to be aware as to when I'm releasing more content here on YouTube as we continue to go through this series, as well as upload tournament games from tournament coverage and things like that as well. Now, if you do want to have a bit more of an in-depth discussion about this, feel free to come and find me when I'm live over on Twitch, where I'm live on Tuesday mornings and Friday evenings, Australian Eastern Daylight Savings Time at the moment, with some Saturday streams happening as well from time to time, where we can have an in-depth discussion about the Tau, different ways you can play them, different Tau seps, things like that, a bit more in-depth than compared to what we are covering in the For the New Guys series. And if you did have any thoughts or anything, we can discuss it more there as well. But ladies and gentlemen, I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I'll catch you in the next one.